The 2025 NFL Draft is over, and with limited picks, the Minnesota Vikings are hoping each pick counts. The Vikings entered the draft with just 4 picks. After standing pat in the first round and drafting an offensive lineman, we know the draft is finished. All right. Vikings insider Cody Benjamin joins me now. Cody, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me back on.
Absolutely. So how would you sum up the Vikings draft class, and what's your overall impression of their first round pick?
Yeah, this is an exciting word, but I guess the word that keeps coming to mind for me is adequate. I think that always going into this draft, knowing that the Vikings were limited on resources, coming in with 4 picks, they ended up turning it into 5 with the trade down on day 2, but it was always going to be harder to, fulfill every need that you want to fill with that few picks. And there's another side to it. Again, they were able to get JJ McCarthy and Dallas Turner last year in the first round, and so you kind of have to remember that there were premium investments at premium positions because of those trades. But with the picks that they had, it was adequate. I think that they addressed offensive line, which we talked about before the draft. They were probably going to go back to the trenches and continue to add youth there. And with Donovan Jackson, their first round pick, that kind of satisfies that need. A little bit surprising that they went wide receiver with their next pick. We talked about that as well. I thought maybe they'd look to other skill spots, maybe cornerback, safety before they did. But again, the Vikings filled a lot of their immediate needs in free agency. And so to kind of add to the trenches with that first round pick, you can't really go wrong with that long term as long as he pans out there.
And the Vikings traded for Sam Howell during the draft. How do you see him fitting in behind JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, we talked about, I think, the possibility of the Vikings looking at kind of outcast quarterbacks via trade to fill that backup spot. I think Sam Howell is about as good as you're going to get at this juncture in terms of adding a guy who has some experience. He also gives you a little upside. I kept circling Carson Wentz as a guy that the Vikings might look at as a number 2 because of the experience. He's from the Midwest. It kind of made sense as a guy that wasn't going to directly challenge JJ McCarthy. But with Sam Howell, you actually get maybe a little more upside because he's only 2 years older than JJ McCarthy. He started a full season for the Commanders a couple of years ago. And so I don't think it's a bad swing to take. I mean, they gave up nothing. I mean, they moved down in the 5th round to acquire him, and so you're not even losing out on a pick really. And so he's on a rookie contract. It's a cheap backup quarterback with some experience. I don't know that you're feeling overwhelmingly positive about your playoff chances if McCarthy goes down for an extended period, but McCarthy's still an unknown as well. So I think it's a solid low risk, medium upside gamble there.
So they also made a pretty big splash in undrafted free agency, giving Gophers QB Max Brosmer some big money. What do you feel like we should read into that with that move?
Yeah, you see kind of money amounts floated around for different, undrafted guys. I think at the end of the day, look, if you're an undrafted rookie free agent quarterback, I think they'd be pleasantly surprised if he made the active roster. I mean, I know it's fun to make the local connections, but and certainly there's an opening there for to compete for the number 3 spot. I mean, I think Sam Howell is probably locked in at the 2 behind McCarthy just because of the experience. He's not costing you a ton. And so, I mean, there's a good opportunity, though, to earn that number 3 spot or stick around on the practice squad. And remember, those guys are eligible to be promoted to the active roster in an emergency situation. But a fun connection, that he gets to stay around, kind of around town.
Okay, yeah, and do you think that Brosmer could realistically beat out Brett Rippon for that number 3 quarterback job?
I mean, I think it would take a strong summer, a strong preseason, but I don't think that's inconceivable. Like I said, I think you've kind of got the 1-2 spots locked in now with JJ McCarthy, Sam Howell. Now, if there's an injury to one of those 2 guys, then the chances of the local guys sticking around go even farther up. But yeah, I think the number 3 spot again, it's going to take because Brett Rippon, he's not a beloved quarterback by any means, but he has experience. He's been around the block in the NFL, and that does matter. But I think you're also looking for upside with that number 3 spot. So certainly there's an opening.
Okay, Cody, so big picture. After the draft and these moves, are the Vikings in a better spot heading into 2025?
Yeah, I don't think that the draft itself moves the needle that much. I think if we're looking at the offseason in total, look at free agency, the draft all together, that total package, I think that, yeah, I mean, I guess if you're going into the offseason expecting that 2025 is going to be the year we turn the page to JJ McCarthy, if that is, you're going in with that, then yes, I think they are in a better spot because they shored up the trenches. You added both experience and free agency up front. Will Fries, Ryan Kelly, we talked about those investments on the offensive line. The defensive line, Javon Hargrave, Jonathan Allen, there's more experience, there's more fortitude, theoretically, in on both the offensive and the defensive line. That should help a quarterback, a young quarterback. I mean, McCarthy again, he's an unknown, but if you were to rank, the situations that young quarterbacks are in around the NFL, I still think JJ McCarthy has probably got one of the, 3 best setups of any young quarterback. I mean, even including guys like Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, the Vikings are still a pretty cozy setup for a young quarterback. So I would expect them to still be, playoff caliber team this year as long as McCarthy is upright and giving them what they expect.
Anything else you wanted to mention today, Cody?
No, it'll be. I think all eyes are now on McCarthy because with every other offseason move, I mean, I would still keep an eye out for a potential addition at cornerback or safety. That was a spot the Vikings didn't touch in the draft, which is kind of a surprise. But now all eyes really are. Look, we've got the lineup relatively set. It's time for JJ to kind of make some noise in his own development under center.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We will be back at it with you throughout the summer as we wait for fall football. But thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.